And I believe that everybody is now in.
Set. Great, thank you. Good evening. I'm calling this public hearing to order. In accordance with the Massachusetts Wetland Protections Act, MGLC 131, Section 40, and the Boston Wetlands Ordinance, Boston City Code Ordinances, Chapter 7-1.4, the Boston Conservation Commission will hold this virtual public meeting this evening on May 1st, 2024, to review the following projects to determine what conditions, if any, the commission will impose in order to protect the interests of the public and private water supply, groundwater, prevention of pollution, flood control, prevention of storm damage, protection of fisheries and land containing shellfish, and protection of wildlife habitat. Excuse me. This public hearing will be followed by our regular meeting, and in accordance with Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022, we are conducting this meeting online. To ensure public access to the deliberations of the Conservation Commission, the public may access this call through telephone and video conferencing. Additionally, the meeting is being recorded. If you do not wish to be recorded, please turn off your video. Members of the public may have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on applications and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand or type in the chat in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you're calling in and cannot use the platform, you can raise your hand by pressing *9 and *6 to unmute yourself. Send your questions to staff via email at cc@boston.gov. For the record, I am Michael Parker, Chair of the Commission. Could staff please identify themselves?
Elena Itamari with the Environment Department.
Didi Hernandez with the Environment Department.
Great, thank you. Now I'll call the roll of commissioners present. Commissioner Long?
Nick Long.
Commissioner Conan?
Anand Thiruvengadam.
Thank you. Commissioner Richmond?
Alice Richmond.
Commissioner Herbst?
Ian Herbst.
Great, thank you. Okay, we have a quorum issue this evening. So we're going to have to bump the agenda around a little bit. Because of those issues, we're going to hear notice of intent for DEP file number 0061991 and Boston file number 2024-106 from Weston and Sampson Engineers, Inc. on behalf of the town of Brookline for the proposed dredging of Willow Pond and bank restoration at Leverett Pond, located at 217 Jamaica Way, Jamaica Plain. Resource areas are inland bank, 100-foot buffer to inland bank, land underwater, bordering land subject to flooding, 25-foot riverfront area and 25-foot waterfront area. Commissioner Long, do you have something to say?
Yes, I have to recuse myself since this has a Boston Parks Department involvement. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, who's here on behalf of the applicant?
Hi, I am here. Alex Gaspar from Weston and Sampson.
Lee Koska, also here from Weston and Sampson, representing the city of Brookline.
And Sam Downs, I am the project engineer from the town of Brookline.
Great, welcome, thank you. Floor is all yours.
Great, thank you. So as you mentioned, this is for the Willow Pond dredging and Leverett Pond bank stabilization project. We have a small locus map to the left, sort of showing the project area. And we have been issued a DEP file number. Next slide. So sort of going over the project components, there are a couple of pieces here. There is the dredging of Willow Pond. There is the bank stabilization at Leverett Pond, and there are the new plantings occurring at the west side of Willow Pond. So components, as you may have seen in the locus map, this project is sort of split between the town of Brookline and the city of Boston, with the entirety of the Leverett Pond occurring over on the Brookline side. The only component occurring within the city of Boston, and the piece that we are going to be focusing on in this presentation, is the dredging of Willow Pond. So just a little background, the project area is at 217 Jamaica Way in Boston, and as previously mentioned, is split between the city of Boston and the town of Brookline. The last time this pond was dredged was in 1963, and since then we've seen a lot of sediment being accumulated, sort of reducing that pond's historic capacity, which is why we are proposing to dredge about 1,200 cubic yards. We're also hoping that this will enhance habitat for aquatic species. Which brings me to this slide. I did want to take a moment to talk about the three-spine stickleback presence in the pond. The three-spine stickleback is a small fish pictured top right. As part of this project, we have had a lot of correspondence with Natural Heritage because there is mapped habitat in Willow Pond. As part of that communication, they did require that we have an ecological survey done of the pond to sort of look for this fish presence. So we did last year have Zoo New England go out and perform the survey. No stickleback were found in Willow Pond. However, just because they weren't found in this survey does not suggest that there are none. So it was still deemed, important to make sure we consider their habitat in this project. As part of the survey, they did sort of make some dredging recommendations based on the different habitats in Willow Pond. This is sort of mapped on the right with the different habitat areas shown in different colors. This report was provided in the notice of intent, I believe. So if you want, a higher level detail, that is there. But just the long and short of it is that they have deemed, the blue area to the south, the dark green area all the way to the north, that red area, and then like the purple pink area were deemed areas that were okay to dredge. So those were the areas that, based on the habitat mapping, they felt okay with us dredging. And that is what we're moving forward with.
Great. Alex, could I just ask you a quick question about Zoo New England's involvement here?
Yeah.
I was not aware that they performed these types of surveys. Is that common?
Yeah, they
So-
actually, I believe they were recommended to us by Natural Heritage. They gave us a list of preferred vendors, and Zoo New England was on the list. So I think this is something they do.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Next slide. So getting to the proposed work. So this is considered a maintenance dredge. We are using hydraulic dredging. Something to note, we were originally proposing mechanical, but after our conversations with Natural Heritage, it was determined that hydraulic dredging was going to have, lower impact on the animal and fish species. So we did adjust to doing hydraulic dredging just to minimize impact. So the material is going to be removed by hydraulic suction from either a barge or onshore equipment. And then is going to be pumped to sediment bags within established dewatering cells that are going to be along the pond bank where the material can drain and dry. Once all that liquid is removed, it's going to be transported off-site for reuse or disposal. We do have a sediment analysis memo, which is quite long and wasn't included in the notice of intent, but can be provided if you want it. And all of that construction and staging is occurring on the Brookline side of the project. We do have a small impact table here at the bottom, just outlining the different impacts. Land underwater, you can see that the majority of the dredging is within the city of Boston. Only a small sliver of the pond is within the town of Brookline. So about 1,000 cubic yards of dredge is going to be in Boston. There's some minimal bank impact. That is just from temporary fencing and erosion control. There's no flood zone impact, and then there is impact to the 25-foot riverfront area and waterfront area, and that is 540 square feet, and that is associated with tree protection. So those are the only impacts occurring on the city of Boston side. Our form included does outline all the total project impact, so if you are interested in that, that was provided. But otherwise, we go to the next slide. So just some mitigation. We have some temporary core logs, straw wattle, and silt fencing that are going to go around, the staging areas, the access points, and the dewatering area. Those same controls will be used, down at the downstream end of both the dredging and the Leverett Pond restoration work. And as previously mentioned, all work is occurring within the wet to protect the existing species within the pond. So a little more, this is, some just typical stuff, protective crushed stone, will be put in areas along Willow Pond, and that'll be outside of wetland resource areas. We'll also be using stabilized construction mats in areas along Willow Pond, where access to the wetland resource areas is necessary. We will be using a wetland seed mix that will be spread along the impacted areas upon removal of the mats. And that's going to be coupled with, the new plantings that are going on the Brookline side of Willow Pond. We have no tree removal proposed. As mentioned, we are going to be using tree protection for existing trees. And then that excavated sediment is going to be transported in covered trucks to an approved facility. Following dewatering, we'll be using the typical BMPs, tire washing, anti-tracking pads, street sweeping, just to prevent sediment migration from the work zone. I believe that is it. So we now welcome, any questions or comments on the project.
Okay, a couple quick ones here. One is I understand that you're still waiting for a MIPA certificate on your what are you on? EIR, single file EIR?
Yep, so we have actually received our EIR certificate.
Oh, you did? When did you receive that? I couldn't find it today.
We received that mid-April, I believe.
Okay.
End of April. I can send it to.
Yeah, we would definitely like to see that. Okay. What about the water quality permit?
That is still in progress. It'll need a water quality certificate as well as a Chapter 91 permit. So we are submitting those at the request of Chapter 91. Those are being submitted separately, not as a joint file.
Yeah, we'd be more concerned with the water quality cert. So I know you generally can't get a licensure, Chapter 91 licensure without your without your order of conditions. So when did you? I'm sorry if you didn't say. If I missed it, I'm sorry. When do you expect to get the water quality cert?
We are still working on pulling that together. We're hoping to submit within the coming week.
Okay. Okay. And then I have some questions on the dewatering process. I would imagine that there's going to be some contaminated sediment just because that's what happens. I'd be surprised if there wasn't. So as far as the dewatering requirements, is that what's the requirement there? Are you forced to do that as far as stockpiling sediments? I know you're putting them in bags. I know you've said it's all on the Brookline side, but I'd like to know more about that process. Why are you doing it? And two, I don't see anything in the NOI regarding where the stockpiles will be placed, and I'm interested in how close those stockpiles will be to our jurisdictional area.
So I can take that one, Alex. I guess a little bit of brief context on the pond. There have been historical impacts from a release up gradient of the pond at the former DPW. It's a known condition with Mass DEP under the Massachusetts Contingency Plan. We did some preliminary sediment sampling in 2019 as part of the early stages of the permitting process. And we found some limited impacts just from petroleum, primarily on the Brookline side of the pond. So there may still be some limited historical impacts from that release, but there wasn't anything too significant, compared to other sites of similar nature to this. So for the dewatering, the material will be pumped into sediment bags and allowed to drain back into the pond. One of the requirements under the MCP is that we cannot create any sheens on surface water. So that's something that's ultimately going to have to be monitored during construction. Another requirement under the actually federal transportation regulations is that the material can't be transported if it's still dripping wet, essentially. Free liquids need to be removed. So that puts us in a situation where we cannot remove the material from the vicinity of the pond until it's at least allowed to dry enough to get it into a truck without leaking out the back, essentially. So the proposed plan at the moment is that material will be staged on the Brookline side of the bank in the available park space, there's a roughly 100-foot area between the edge of the bank and existing pathways and other kind of features that we're staying away from, which is the limit of our construction zone. So all sediment will be temporarily stored in that area until it's dry enough to transport. If needed, it will be amended with Portland cement or another additive just to basically dry up any of the free liquid. The intent is to move the material off-site as quickly as possible, but we do still have to comply with those federal regulations and get it somewhat dry before it's moved. As part of the MCP process, a release abatement measure plan will have to be submitted once a contractor is selected and we're through the rest of the permitting process. And that work will ultimately be overseen by a licensed site professional who will be, ultimately the individual responsible for mitigation of any lingering impacts from those oil or hazardous materials if they're encountered. And I guess one thing to note, I misspoke there. There have been no hazardous materials encountered as of yet. It's a nuance in the definition, but our impacts are limited to the historical oil release from back in, I want to say, the 80s to 90s.
Understood. Okay, that was a good explanation. Thank you. So as far as the dewatering process itself, the sediments will be in bags. Is there another form of filtration before the water or the runoff
Yep,
reaches?
so that material will be stored on poly along the bank so that it won't percolate down into the existing soils. Then there's a row of your typical sediment controls, either straw, bales, straw wattles, between the sediment bags and the bank. So the material will be filtered both through the bags, then through an additional 1 to 2 layers of straw wattles or bales, before ultimately the water discharges back into the pond. And one thing to note, if for whatever reason we do encounter, areas of more significant petroleum contamination, that material will have to, under the MCP, be managed separately and would likely wind up getting drummed with all the runoff captured. But for a project of this nature to do that for all the material winds up being cost prohibitive for offsite disposal of all that material. So that would be on a case-by-case basis if it's encountered during construction.
Okay. So all of the sediments will be monitored by one of your LSPs.
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you. Elena, what do you have?
Yeah, so I just wanted to flag for the commission again, and just to clarify, there isn't explicit regulations that state that the commission should not close the hearing prior to these other reviews being completed, but depending on if more information comes to light or if the project changes substantially, just noting that it might end up requiring an amended order of conditions or potentially a new NOI, depending on what other reviews say. So that was the main note that we had. And then the other note that we had is that we had spoken to the conservation agent in Brookline, Tom Brady, and had just discussed the project, given the fact that it's in both jurisdictions. And the thing that Tom had shared was just, again, noting that the water levels could change after the culvert is cleared and all of the debris that's built up there over the last few years gets cleared. So that was the one thing that he also recommended that we flag.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Commissioner Conan, you are first.
Thank you. There was a cubic footage, 1,200 cubic footage, is it? How is
Yes.
it distributed? Can you explain that?
So there's 1,240 cubic yards of material to be removed. Of that, 1,050 fall on the mapped Boston side of the city line. So the bulk of the pond itself falls in Boston. So it's 1,050 cubic yards that are from that side of the line.
Okay. And they're all, is it like evenly distributed, or is it closer to the edge? It's less or
Understood. So the majority of the removal is actually close to the Brookline side of the line. As we get closer towards the pond edge on the Boston side, it tapers out. Reason being for that was communication with NHESP on the 3-spine stickleback. We're trying to preserve as much habitat for that as possible. So essentially center channel, if you will, that's being, that the majority of that removal is happening at, which falls right next to the Brookline line.
I see. Okay, thank you. And so did I hear this correctly that it was identified as a habitat for stickle blocks? So is it sticklebacks, but no sticklebacks were found?
That is
Correct.
So does that mean,
The known population is in Spring Pond, which is directly adjacent to Willow Pond. And so it's just established that they're in Spring Pond. And so the question from NHESP was confirming that there is no population in Willow Pond because of their close proximity to one another.
I see. So you weren't expecting to find any to begin with?
We were not. And Zoo New England had actually independently performed a three-spine stickleback survey a number of years ago and found a similar result, that there are no three-spine stickleback in Willow Pond, just in Spring Pond.
And did you see them in Spring Pond? I don't know if you even looked.
I do believe that they were found in Spring Pond, both eggs and adults.
I see. Just curious, if the changing climate is affecting their habitat, and I didn't know what not finding meant, if when they were once there and now not there, but it sounds like they were never there, as far as we know, in
Correct.
Willow Pond. And they're endangered, correct?
They are
Yeah.
endangered.
Sticklebacks?
The Spring
Wait.
Pond population, from what I recall, is the southernmost fully freshwater population of that particular fish. It's its claim to fame. So
I see. That's good to know. So is NIFWIF not involved in here? Or are they like the authority to tell us what to look for? National Fish and Wildlife Foundation? I know you mentioned National Heritage, but who's the authority here?
It is like mapped natural heritage habitat, so it is, the Division of Fisheries and Wildlife, their habitat.
which Division of Fisheries and Wildlife is also consulted as part of the ENF and EIR process, and they're generally in accordance with all the considerations that NHESP raised as well.
I see. Okay. Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you. That's all I had, Chair Parker.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Richmond?
Yes, thank you very much. One of my questions has already been answered in response to the questions from the chair. But the other question I had is, where is the stuff, once it's dried, gonna go?
So as part of the 401 water quality cert process, we'll be getting letters from potential receiving facilities indicating that they can accept the material. That'll fall a little later on in the overall permitting timeline, but in general, the material will go to an out-of-state landfill. Turnkey landfill up in Rochester, New Hampshire can in theory accept the material, but in all likelihood, it would be going to High Acres, New York, or possibly to a facility up in Scarborough, Maine.
And is that because you expect it to be contaminated in some way?
That's largely the driver. The historical oil contamination will likely rule it out from going to an in-state facility under COM 15 regulations. That being said, additional sampling of the material will ultimately be performed likely during the construction phase. And should the data, come back clean, there is the possibility that the material could stay in state. But in all likelihood, just based on the physical nature of it as sediment and what we've seen historically, it'll be going out of state.
And is it your sense that whatever is in there is spread equally in Willow Pond, or is there one area that you're expecting to be worse than the rest of it?
We've seen it in the greatest areas of it that historically have been identified are in the vicinity of drainage outfalls associated with the old system that the oil kind of leaked into. One of the measures that was raised by NHESP is all of the drainage outfalls will be cleared. So that'll also allow us to target those areas for potential sediment removal to get anything lingering in the vicinity of those.
And how do you clear them?
Same method as the rest of the pond dredging that's done with the hydraulic system.
And do you do that first before you do the rest, or is that, how does that happen?
Ultimate kind of scope and sequence will be up to the contractor, but in all likelihood, that'll be one of the first areas that they tackle.
And is there going to be testing that goes on throughout this process to determine whether your sense, when I mean your sense, but the sense about contamination is correct, or will there be other testing to make sure that that's right?
There will be. So one of the requirements of the ultimate receiving facility is that the material get tested at a certain frequency. It varies depending on the facility, but the general rule of thumb is at least one sample per 200 tons of material generated. So we'll have, numerous additional samples collected throughout the dredging process just to confirm that the material meets, kind of what we expect in terms of contaminant concentrations.
And how many tons do you think you're going to be taking out if that was in the report? I don't remember it.
So I can do some quick math for you if you'll bear with me. Probably in the vicinity of 2,000 to 2,500 tons. It's about 2 tons per cubic yard because the material is saturated.
So you'll be doing this testing about 10 times, you think, while the project's going on?
Yep. And one thing to note, the testing requirements are for a whole slew of analytes above and beyond the identified contaminants of concern. So in the off chance there was, a pocket of something unexpected, this analysis includes, numerous things above and beyond the historic oil impacts that we've seen to the material.
Okay, thank you very much. Your answers have been very helpful.
Thank you. Commissioner Herbst?
Sorry. I wanted to ask about impacts on the bank. I'm looking at your C101 to get a sense, and you show the top of the bank. I guess I'm wondering, how far do you dredge? Are you dredging to the bottom of the bank? Is there some?
Yeah, if you look at, bear with me, sheet C103, if you have it in front of you. That shows the overall sediment removal areas. On the Boston side, we have those 2 large areas of no dredging. So looking at this, we're probably on the order of 40 feet or so away from the bank in those areas. There's a little area between the 2 areas of no dredging where we'll get close to the bank. But existing contours show us as still probably about 15 plus feet away from the edge of the bank. As we get closer to the outlet structure, we're roughly 10 to 15 feet off the edge of the bank in those areas as well. So in general, with the exception, it looks like of a really small area on the southern extents where we'll be getting closer to the bank, we're roughly at most 40 feet away, and at closest, probably 10 or 15 feet looking at it.
And is that from the top or the bottom of the bank?
That would be from, let me see, bear with me as I go to the area where that's all now. It would be from, that is from top of bank. At least as I have it shown here.
Okay, it would be helpful to know how close you're getting to the bottom of the bank. I think part of what I'm trying to understand is you're doing tree protection. Most of those appear to be above the top of the bank, and I'm all for tree protection, but you also have a limit of work quite a bit, beyond that still. And I guess I'm just wondering what that's about, what activity, if any, we should be expecting that would be in those areas.
Yeah, one thing I will note is the tree protection on the Boston side. It really is a conservative measure. All the access to the pond, the staging and whatnot, it's all on the Brookline side. And the limited work that may, in theory, depending on what the contractor selects, be done from a barge will solely be within the limits of, the existing surface water. So the tree protection is really a just in case. We have no intention of accessing the pond from the city of Boston side or bringing any heavy equipment, in the vicinity of the trees over in that area.
But that's what you'd be protecting against, not your dredge activity.
It's just in theory, if anything were to happen, there's no work proposed over there. And in all likelihood, and again, this will be selected by the contractors, their ultimate means and methods. The pond's not very large. They're probably going to be able to get most of the material with a long arm excavator from the Brookline side without needing a barge. It's a tight pond to even get a barge into in the first place. But that will ultimately be selected by the contractor. And so just as a, conservative measure in the off chance they did need to bring a barge out, we did have tree protection on the Boston side just in case.
And for the limit of work, are you putting in erosion control or marking or what should we expect there? Or is
Alex, for the Boston side of the city line, do you off the top of your head recall what we have for erosion controls? I don't know if we have that.
Not off the top of my head.
I don't believe that, and I'll have to double check this on the plans quickly here, but we don't have, actually here, I found the right sheet on C101. We don't have anything proposed over there because we aren't tracking onto the bank at all.
Right.
Any of, in theory, the access to the material near the bank will be from the water side. So we don't have anything currently proposed on that side
so the limit
of
of
the city
work,
line because we won't be going over there on the shore,
right?
Side of it.
So the limit of work is sort of theoretical. It's not you're not planning to be over there at all.
Right.
And your filing does say that you're having, I don't know, 25 or 30 feet of bank impact, and I can't find that anywhere on the plan.
Alex, do you recall where that falls?
I mean, I think when we're looking at these plans, I think we do have some sort of control over there because I think they had said that the 35 feet of bank impact was from temporary fencing and erosion control. I'm just looking for where that is.
I believe that what that is there's a limited amount of fencing that falls right alongside the city line, right next to the existing outfall structure. That, as shown, we have it right up against the line, and looking at it, yeah, it's about 30 feet in length. So from what I recall, that's likely where that originates from. And in reality, exactly where that line falls is, unknown. We don't have a dedicated survey of exactly that portion of it, but as mapped, we have it right along it. So, that's really the only area in which our erosion controls come close to your side of the city line. Otherwise, everything else with how the city line falls, we have, I'll call it a buffer, but at least 10 feet or so of distance between any of our construction staging area and city of Boston property.
And I understand you have a time of year restriction. What time of year do you expect you would do this?
So we have a time of year restriction between November 15th. I believe it's November 15th or November 1st and April 1st. So our hope, if, fingers crossed, we all know that how slowly things can go, but our hope is that if we do get all approvals by this November, that we would be able to start and complete the project in 3 months during the time of year restriction between November and the end of March, beginning of April.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. So you are restricted to that period of time.
Yes, we have to operate outside of hatching season.
Okay.
And that was from both Division of Wildlife and Fisheries and NAGSP. They had similar comments on our original submittal to all the departments. So they're in agreement on the window in which this work needs to occur.
Okay. And I think I read, and I know this is more on the Brookline side, that you that your bank work you expect will reduce sedimentation. Are you also doing work to improve the storm drains? Or is that needed?
Well, the improvements to the storm drains will be the removal of sediment from the structure that is currently sunken or, not operational. Because it's so much of an unknown what the condition of the pipe is because it's buried. The town is committed to improvements. Once we determine what condition the pipe is, there's clearly not a head wall or something that currently exists. So as soon as that is unearthed, we do hope to restore it to a condition that it will function as intended, that it has not for 10 or more years.
Okay. There's only one storm drain going.
There's only one outfall on the Brookline side, and then there's one outfall on the Boston side. And the one on the Boston side appears to be in fine shape.
Okay. And I was interested in the comment from Tom Brady that to expect it or potentially a change in water level. Could you just explain what that is?
So the current outlet, let's call it, is goes underneath, the culverts go underneath the bridge. And the joke that I made when we had the site visit was that the only thing that's maintaining the current water level is the debris. And so in order to maintain a more reasonable or a better ecological environment for the species that live there, we are proposing an outlet control structure that will maintain the appropriate historic water levels of the pond. There's currently nothing, if all the debris were to be removed, we would end up with a stream instead of a lake. And so this is to create a more robust, improved environment for the species that live in this pond, to keep it a pond instead of a stream.
I see. And that's part of the permitting you've been doing at the state level?
Yeah, it has been. And it's been it's been made clear to the different agencies that we've worked with that, we are just one cleaning of a debris away from this not being a pond. And so they've been supportive of our effort to create an outlet control structure here, including DEP Waterways, who we just met with the other week.
Okay. I think that answers my questions. I think we'll want to acknowledge the time of year restriction and the special condition. Our general, and I think Chair Parker hinted at this, but our general inclination is to get all the information from your other reviewers, not Chapter 91, but so that we don't have to come back for amendments and so forth. But that's all from me.
Okay, thank you. And on page 10 of the NOI, it says no work will occur between November 15th to March 15th. I think that contradicts what was said before. So if that's not correct, it needs to be corrected in the NOI.
We can amend that. I believe that's a typo.
Okay, Elena, anyone from the public raise their hand?
I'm not seeing any raised hands, and we also didn't receive anything in the inbox. And apologies, I didn't mention this earlier, but the other item that we would recommend here is a special condition for any additional invasives removal to anything beyond hand pulling and cutting would require the proponent to submit to commission staff the herbicide application approval.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so with the, and Elena, I don't know if you outlined this or not, but I know that you had a discussion with DEP about best practices. And what you discussed was not issuing an order of conditions until we see the water quality cert, because that could change the way we view the project.
Yeah, that's what it sounded like. They didn't provide a direct recommendation, but they did want to flag specifically that there are, a number of ways that the project could have to change through these other review processes. So it is up to the commission what their preference would be if they want to see more information and try to make sure that the plans that are permitted now are the plans that have been reviewed and approved by everyone else. Again, the closing it and issuing an order of conditions now runs the risk of potentially having to come back for a modified, either an amended order of conditions or potentially a new NOI.
Okay, I think we'd also like to see the most recent MIPA certificate as well before we issued an order of conditions. Lee or Sam, or actually Alex, did you want to respond to that approach?
I mean, I think that is fine. I mean, I will say that I'll send along the MIPA certificate, but everything mentioned in that certificate is fairly positive. I feel that, through the process, we've been put in front of a lot of agencies who have all responded, pretty positively to the project. And we did address, all the comments. So I would obviously prefer that we close the hearing tonight, but understand if that's not something you feel you can do at this time.
Yeah. I mean, and I go back and forth on this. We talk about this a lot. I mean, DEP did comment on this NOI to us. And so functionally, the comments that we receive from DEP for this should be no different than what they gave to MIPA or resolved through MIPA. But I think we can all acknowledge that sometimes there are different perspectives within the agency. So you don't always get the same opinion from the same reviewer, or from different reviewers or different regions. And I think the really important one here we'd like to see is the water quality cert. So that's why I was asking you when you expect to get that. And I don't think you'd be able to proceed without it anyway. So I don't think we'd be delaying you if we wanted to wait to see the water quality cert. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
I'll just note, I think you gave us, thorough answers to all our questions. So this is just a matter of seeing the final information, and then we wouldn't need a hearing of this length or detail again.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. Thank you for clarifying that. Okay, with that, I would entertain a motion to continue the hearing.
So moved.
So moved.
Okay, Commissioner Conan,
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond,
Aye.
Commissioner Herbst,
Aye.
and I vote aye. So that's carries 4-0. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you to the
everyone. Have a
commission.
good night.
Thank you.
Good night. Okay, before we go into the next one, who are we going to have for the rest of the hearing? Commissioner Conan, do you have to leave?
I would like to, if that's okay, Chair Parker.
Okay, Commissioner Richmond, you're on for the rest of the evening, correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes. Thank you.
and you're excused. Thank you very much. Good luck with everything.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
take care. Okay, next item on the agenda is notice of intent for DEP file number 0061988 and Boston file number 2023-013 from Hughes Environmental Consulting on behalf of 581 ALH Development LLC for the proposed redevelopment of a paved parking area with a mixed-use residential and commercial development located at 579 American Legion Highway in Roslindale. Resource areas are 25-foot riverfront area, 25-foot waterfront area, 100-foot buffer to inland bank. This has been continued from the April 3rd, 2024 hearing. Who's here on behalf of the applicant?
Mr. Chairman, I'm here, Tom Hughes with Hughes Environmental Consulting, here on behalf of the applicant for 579 American Legion. I think we can get through this pretty quickly. At our last hearing, we just had a few follow-up issues, which we've addressed. Real quickly going through them on landscape, there was an issue of, would we be willing to put seed onto bare slopes? I've identified a seed mix that will do well in a fairly sort of mineral-based soil like what we have here. It's actually for dry sites, but the way the water runs down the slope so quickly to get into the stream. The upper parts tend to be fairly dry in that area, so I think it will do well. It also incorporates rye, which is quick growing. We also agreed we would add jute or another natural erosion control blanket, but no photo degradable elements to it. So none of that plastic webbing. It would all be a natural fiber erosion control matting over that seed in places where it makes sense to do so. And then we added a provision to our final planting that prior to putting the plants in the ground, we will lay them out. We had said we would do this, but we put it in writing in the letter that we would lay them out, invite water and sewer to come. We would then adjust locations in the field to make sure that we had nothing in the way of the water and sewer operations folks. And then we would put them in the ground. We clarified a couple things in the O&M. We added the pervious patio. We double checked our checklist for the frequency of inspections to make sure that was all good. And we took out some of the optional language in the O&M and made it more, shalls as opposed to shoulds. And then we responded to the letter from the neighborhood group, and really there were only a handful of things in their letter that had anything to do with the conservation. They had a question about confirmation of the resource area boundaries. And I note that these resource area boundaries are still valid under the order of conditions issued for the prior permit at or the current permit at 581. On top of that, it's a really obvious boundary. The bankful conditions, because of the way the water is so flashy in this section, it's essentially a very obvious sort of scour layer, and the vegetation is a dramatic change from where the water flows and where it doesn't flow there. So it's a really obvious boundary as well. There was also a site visit where city staff have seen this as well. And then they had questions about building height, shadow, daylight impacts on the brook, et cetera. And they included questions about stormwater and hydrology. And I noted that, our filing includes a complete stormwater report. We have engineered our stormwater. The other elements looking at shadow and building height and all of those really aren't relevant for this site. And in fact, really it's a fairly shady area to some extent because of the tree canopy, but the more shade the better, because it reduces the heat of any runoff. Although, as I noted at our last hearing, we're taking all of this water and putting it into an infiltration system between the patio and the stormwater system with the dry well. So we're actually cooling the urban runoff, which to me, in addition to the sort of treatment of the stormwater for its water quality, cooling it off is significant. There was one other issue, that John Sullivan had noted that we would need church permission to tie into that drain pipe because it wasn't owned by Water and Sewer. We approached the church. The initial feedback was that they were not inclined to grant that okay. So what we have done is we updated the plan, and that overflow pipe now ties into the head wall, and that should be visible if it's not quite as visible as I'd like it to be, but it runs as a diagonal from the structure right over to that head wall. And so we rerouted that. So that's it. The other thing, we did get DEP comments after we sent in that letter, and they were reading the NOI as saying that we were altering banks. So we answered that question and clarified that that we are actually only altering buffer zone to bank. And we clarified that, and then we did a quick red line strikeout in the narrative to put some explicit language to that effect to make it clearer. The method of debris removal, generally, as was similar when we talked about 581, and I did put, again, a sentence into the narrative in red line strikeout on this. The removal is by hand, or if it's too heavy to handle by hand, it would be with equipment operating from the flat up above, reaching down either with a bucket and thumb, not digging, but just to grab things and lift them up, or using a chain with people on the slope kind of guiding that. But there would be no excavation in the slope towards the water at all. And there was a question about whether or not we were meeting stormwater standards to the maximum extent practical. And as I read it, we're designed to treat storms up to a 100-year event. We've got 80% TSS removal. We're collecting and infiltrating roof runoff and site runoff. So I think that's pretty good for maximum extent practical. So so we've issued our response to the DEP comments. I'm really comfortable with what we've done. I think it's a good project. And I'm happy to answer any questions from the commission or address any abutter concerns that come up.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tom. So quick question. We don't have final DEP comments back though, right? You've responded to their comments and waiting for their final comments?
They don't typically do a back and forth. It's typically a one-off. They give you comments, you address them, if they even write comments, and then you provide the information. And if it's, you know, if you're on the edge of your seat, you sometimes try to call them and hound them for additional feedback. But it's not a back and forth iterative process with DEP. It's a one-off set of comments. You address them, and it's really sort of on the commission to determine, you know, based on DEP's comments and our response, whether you're comfortable with how that all sort of goes down as it relates to the performance standards.
Okay, have we seen the comments and your response?
Yes, the comments came from DEP the later in the afternoon that I sent in the letter, and I addressed these by email yesterday. But I do want to note that all of the things that are in my response were discussed at the last hearing. It's just really clarifying detail.
Okay, and then on the pervious pavers being added to the updated O&M. No, what was it added to? I'm sorry. Hold on. The patio has been added to stormwater report narrative and checklist. Could you direct me to that? I'm like frantically searching for it.
So if you have to go way to the end of the stormwater report where there's an O&M checklist, and in fact, if you're in the PDF, it's easiest just to search for the word patio. And if you want, I can do that on my computer and see if I can give you a page. I mean, it's pretty simple, but it was not included in the original O&M, so there was no assurance of maintenance. So it's in there now, and it is okay.
Yeah, I didn't get it. I get a bunch of
put
ads.
There's a permeable pavers technical spec sheet that's on page 83 of 123 of the PDF.
Yep. Okay.
Then there's another section on another thing on page 84, and then I believe it's included now in the checklist for inspection.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. I will look at this while I go to Elena and ask her about her feelings about the DEP comment issue that I brought up. Also, Commissioner Herbst, I'm interested in her perspective on that. Thank you. Elena?
Absolutely. So yeah, my understanding based on my conversation with DEP is that it's true, they might just not have additional comments. They usually don't respond back and say that the supplemental materials are adequate. I do know that as of about 4:50 today, they hadn't reviewed the supplemental materials. So the question here would not so much be getting approval or, you know, sign off or anything like that from DEP on the supplemental materials, but more so just ensuring that there aren't additional comments based on the provided responses.
Okay, thank you. What else do you have on this?
That was really my main flag here.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Long?
Yeah, I appreciate the applicant getting back to us about some of our comments and the additional landscaping and notes on the pervious pavers and the maintenance. So all my questions were answered.
Fantastic, thank you. Commissioner Richmond?
Yeah, maybe I'm the only one who doesn't understand this, but I understood that the church had said no, and your solution was to put it where?
So the pipe would run to the head wall and essentially drop the water right into the brook. And that's and keep in mind when that happens is after all of the capacity of the infiltration system has filled up. So it's not going to flow all the time. So when it does flow, the brook is pretty much going to be at its high flow stage anyway, and it will just serve to go in and oxygenate the water. It's already gone through treatment. A lot of it is roof runoff. So it's clean before treatment anyway. So it's just instead of going into the brook where you don't see it in a pipe, it's going into a brook in a similar fashion, but out of the head wall.
And out of the head wall. And I mean, if there's, as we've had this spring, a lot of rain and stuff like, I mean, I'm just, it's completely uncontrolled, correct?
No, it's completely controlled actually. So when it rains, the first inch of rain falls, right? It goes in the system. It's not even close to full. It's some of the water is actually infiltrating right into the patio, right into the soil. Then it goes into the train of the treatment unit and then the dry well. And all of that has to fill up. It's infiltrating while it's filling up. So it's not like a bucket filling up with water. It's like a bucket with a bunch of holes in it, filling up with water. And all of that has to be exceeded. And by the time that's happened, the Canterbury Brook will be flowing about as high as you see it ever flowing. And the water then comes out of all of the treatment train. It's already gone through particle separator, cleaning of the water, and then it goes in. It's just an overflow so that if the system fills up, it has a place to go.
Okay, and I'm just trying to understand. So, but when it was first designed, you thought it needed to go a different way. So I'm just trying to understand whether this is just as good, better. How come this wasn't the original design?
So the engineer saw a pipe within a Boston Water and Sewer easement, and it was a shorter shot and less material to drill through, to sort of core through, to put a pipe through. It was sort of more of a typical overflow route, but it turns out Water and Sewer doesn't own the pipe. It's in the easement, but they don't own the pipe.
Right.
So we can't do that. So this is very similar, but instead of dumping the water where you don't see it going into the pipe, but it's the same thing. It's coming out above the flow and dropping into the flow. That would happen, but it happens, we come up to the back of the head wall, core through the head wall, and the pipe sort of just sticks out of the head wall and drops the water down into the brook there. But
Okay,
like I
so-
said, that's not going to happen when in a low flow environment. It's only going to happen in a high flow environment.
Okay, and is that pipe going to present any hazard to anything as it sticks out there?
No, it's not really sticking out very far. It's just coming through the head wall. So
Okay.
the water just kind of pours down.
So in response to perhaps my inartful question, this is just as good as what you did before. It just takes a little more doing as you do the construction.
Yeah, there's a part of me that thinks it's better because it's visible,
Okay,
right? Whereas if we stick a pipe into a pipe and you can't see anything, you never see what's happening. So
okay,
to some extent, it sees the light of day, so to speak.
okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. Those answers are helpful.
Thank you. Commissioner Herbst?
Yeah, I think my questions are answered, and I think that is pretty much accurate with DEP. The one, thing that I can't evaluate is whether that meets the stormwater standards as much as possible, but I think I'll trust that Commissioner Sullivan has reviewed that adequately. So nothing more from me.
Okay, thank you. So where does that leave us, Elena? I'm sorry. You said that you're still expecting DEP to get back to you one way or the other as to whether they have comments or not?
My understanding is that I might have to reach out to them to confirm that they have reviewed the revised materials and confirm that they have no further comments. They might not proactively say that they have no further comments. But at this point, it's still possible for them to have further comments on the supplemental materials.
Okay.
Not
Commissioner Herbst, when you were agreeing about DEP, what were you agreeing to? That they may never come back to us, or that we should wait for them? Oh, you're muted. I'm sorry.
Sorry. I mean, Ellen has had the actual conversation, but yes, my sort of presumption would be along what Mr. Hughes had to say, which is they say what they have to say, and it's up to us to make something of it.
Okay.
But because Ellen has had a conversation, that may be different.
Okay, so I'm on the fence here. Elena, help me out about what motion to call for.
It's so as far as facts go, they haven't reviewed the revised materials, so it's possible that they'll still have comments on the revised materials. That's, I
Okay.
mean, yeah, that's
Oh,
really
okay.
the main concern that I have here, is that they
Well-
haven't had a chance to look through them.
So, Mr. Chair, would you like a motion to continue the hearing?
Based on that, yes.
Hey,
So
Mr.
moved.
Chair, this
Yes.
is Adam Burns, Project. Oh, man.
Yep. Adam, did you want to say something?
I did, but you already took the motion. Am I still able to speak?
Yeah. Yep.
Hey, guys. Adam Burns, project proponent, with Tom Hughes here, having some camera troubles. Otherwise, I'd be on camera, but technical difficulties, and so to speak. I just wasn't sure, Tom, if you wanted to share what were the DEP comments and what did they relate to, and would they have any bearing on the decision if they had further comments on those items?
Well, I did actually walk through those comments. I mean, the one thing I will add, Mr. Chairman, is I tend to speak DEP. I'm not only a consultant, but I have been a regulator in the past. I've been with both Mass DEP and Maine DEP. I tend to think that these are the types of comments that I believe we've addressed, and I'm not overly concerned about further questions or comments being to the level that would trigger them to intervene in the project. But you know, if DEP indicates that they are going to review these materials and then give us, you know, assurance that they're satisfied, there's always something nice about having that. But I don't think in this case that's necessary. I mean, there's keywords that always end up in a comment that you can kind of tell when they are they have of heightened concern. And the fact is that, you know, when I kind of said we've improved stormwater and the whole stormwater standard, you know, we're treating up to the 100-year storm. We're handling up to the 100-year storm and providing 80% TSS removal. I mean, that's basically a new development standard right there. So we can't really do much more than that. So I'd be very comfortable if the commission wanted to go forward and close an issue. But I would also defer if there are commission members that are concerned and would want to wait the 2 weeks. I mean, I think my client would prefer to just move forward, but you know, I will ultimately defer to the commission on it. But I'm very comfortable with how we've responded to these comments and the nature of the comments themselves. And I think that the questions about the work on the bank go away because we're not working in the bank.
Okay. So why don't I do this? I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing, and let's see what happens.
Want me to withdraw my motion first?
Oh, I didn't know you actually made it. I thought we were just discussing it.
No, I moved and I withdraw it.
Okay. Do we have anyone who would, in face of the withdrawn motion, anybody who would put forth a motion to close the hearing and issue the order of conditions?
I'll move to close the hearing.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Long?
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond?
Aye.
Commissioner Herbst?
Aye.
And I vote aye, so that carries 4-0. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much and have a great
Thank you,
night.
everyone.
Thank you.
It's the last time I'm making a motion for you, Mr. Chair.
Well, I was confused. You have to excuse me. I get confused easily. Okay. Next item on the agenda is notice of intent for DEP file number 0061990 and Boston file number 2024-015 from 4 Point Associates on behalf of the Massachusetts Port Authority for the repairs associated with an emergency certification for a sinkhole located at 256 Marginal Street in East Boston. Resource areas or land subject to coastal storm flowage, 100-foot buffer to coastal bank. Who's here on behalf of the applicant?
Hi, Chair Parker. This is Erica Frazier.
Hi, Erica. Who else?
We have with us tonight Ann Legassi and Marshall Greenland from Boston Harbor Shipyard and Marina. And we also have Chris Bush and Pam Carnevale from Massport.
Okay. And I think you are aware of my grave concerns regarding the local ordinance and the exemption that that your client and Massport have asserted in this matter. So I understand that you didn't fill out a Boston NOI form, and notice wasn't given to abutters within 300 feet. So, and Chris, I don't know, we can talk about the project, but I thought we should get this out of the way beforehand, get it all out on the table. Chris, I don't know if you want to say anything, but I've read the case law that you presented. I've talked to, I have a colleague or two who have served as regulators for the state about this to make sure that, to give me a reality check. So I'm pretty comfortable in saying that I don't think for a marina that services private customers and is not doing their work for Massport, whether it be operating a parking garage or for, airport users or doing work for the airport itself. I just don't think that, the activity that goes on at the marina is an essential or fulfilling an essential governmental function. So I know you didn't come prepared with legal counsel, so, but I want to give you the opportunity to respond.
Yeah, I understand the concern. I know our leadership at Massport and legal counsel takes a very conservative approach to the Enabling Act, and for many, many years has considered, development, maintenance, operation, leasing of our port properties for any purpose as an essential governmental function under the Enabling Act. We've always considered where actions of our tenants are reasonably related to that public purpose, that they are exempt from the local regulations. I think particularly here where, part of our mission is maintaining, sustaining, DPA and port properties, where this tenant is doing exactly that, and through the shipyard, sustaining those water dependent industrial uses, where through these leases, these funds are going back into supporting the port, the airport, and those essential functions that more broadly falls within, again, that essential governmental function realm and under that exemption. So, I mean, that's sort of been the message, the standard followed to date. But again, as responded to an email, as part of the filing and the correspondence with commission staff shortly before the hearing, happy to follow up with legal staff to discuss this further.
Okay. And again, I'm not going to engage you. I think it's probably fair to engage with legal counsel at this point. But what you said, I think there were some fair points there. I have to say I'm not convinced. But we'll just let this go for further discussion. So Erica, do you want to give us an overview of, so this is a after the fact NOI.
Correct.
So do you want to give us an overview of the work that's been done?
Yes. So Dee Dee, if you could please just move on to the next slide, I can get right into it. Thank you. So the emergency cert that we received on February 27th covered the work for backfilling and repairing the sinkhole. And that work was complete as of, I believe, March 22nd. So the work that this NOI was for was the excavation, soil stockpiling, and the trench that was dug in order to find the electrical conduit that had been damaged. Next slide, please. So just as a reminder, the existing wetland resource area at the project site is land subject to coastal storm flowage, and that includes both the AE zone and the BE zone. And it is also within the 100-foot buffer to coastal bank. Next slide, please. So just as a recap, we were able to locate the concrete cap that had failed. And those are the images on the left, the two images on the left. And then the two images on the right show the area that was excavated, both around the sinkhole and the trench that had the electrical conduit. Next slide, please. And I'm actually going to turn this over to Marshall at the shipyard, who's going to just go over the repairs that occurred and discuss through the two sections that we prepared.
Thank you, Erica. Yeah, I'll go through this drawing quickly. It shows the kind of excavated and area where we had the sinkhole. The note on the top left kind of points out where the main issue turned out to be, which was just a concrete cap that seems to have failed and opened a pretty significant size gap in what we call the relieving platform. So excavated out, found that problem. Also, some of the sheets that are shown here had deteriorated below the level of the pier that it abutted behind them. So there was some fill loss there. And then the electrical conduit that was damaged when essentially with the fill loss, there was undermining in the concrete and asphalt caved in on it. So this is kind of generally what it looked like when we had it opened up, and then the I-beams there just carrying from the marina pier that isn't shown in the picture. Next slide, please. So same picture, just kind of noting the fill and the repairs that were done. So starting on the top left, anchored a form to the existing concrete gravity wall there, and poured concrete back over it to do a kind of in-kind concrete repair to that wall. Raised up, put sheets, steel plates in to raise up where the existing sheet piles had deteriorated below the pier that they abut there, and then on the top right, just reformed a concrete cap that had also failed running in the north-south direction, and repaired replaced the marina wire, repaired the conduit, and encased it in concrete, and then backfilled with the same fill that had been stockpiled. Graded it with crushed stone, and that's pretty much how it sits today, waiting to be resurfaced.
And I believe if we move to the next slide, we included some pictures of what the site looks like today.
Do we have any stamp plans or something? Is this it?
Yeah, this is all we have. We weren't able to get engineered plans.
We did submit to the commission a statement from an engineer who's on the call actually, Brian Cullinan, who was able to go out to the site and confirm the work that had been completed, but he can speak to the work that was completed, but we weren't able to get stamp plans as there was no engineered or design engineered as part of this project.
Yeah, so I went on site after the work was completed and took some of these photos on the right here and just made notes on my observations on what I could see on this day. So I noted like the limits of excavation or the saw cut lines, the stabilized gravel shown here, and took some measurements on the approximate extents of this area. And then wrote a engineer statement based on these observations and prepared a graphic, which I can pull up, but it generally shows this area on a plan. But yeah, I was just attesting to what I witnessed on this day after the majority of the work was performed.
Okay, the majority of the work, what was performed after?
Well, I guess all the work you see here, I'm not aware of any work that was performed after this.
No, no work has been performed since. The only remaining work, Chair Parker, is the area would need to be paved with asphalt to complete the cap. And it hasn't been done yet, but would need to be done. This allowed the shipyard to monitor the repairs for a month or longer than a month now, but to allow a full tidal cycle to make sure that the repairs were sufficient.
Okay. I just don't know what to do about this. I've never seen this before, so I'm going to be interested in what other commissioners say. And Elena, okay. Guess it is what it is. Are you finished, Erica?
Yep, all set. The mitigation measures were presented at our last hearing for the emergency cert, and this was just to confirm that they were all in place and that the only remaining work is for the area to be paved.
Okay, thank you. So Marshall, last time we were in, we talked about, and I see Ann Legacy's on the line here. She may have something to say about this. We talked about how this was the second time that work was done without notifying commission staff or applying for a permit. And I wanted to know what protocols you're going to put in place to ensure that we don't keep on running into this issue. So would you like to speak to that as far as?
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely. I think since that last call, we've done a lot of work to assess these kind of issues that we have, as we try and kind of upgrade and repair this site. So we've spent a lot of time with our team, Fort Point, and communicating with Concom to really explain the type of work that a lot of these common types of issues require, and some of our planned work going forward. And so just past and future planned projects, and trying to predict unexpected and assessing what the impact for needing to go to Concom, communicating with Concom will be for all of those projects. So And then as far as with our team here, just meeting, notifying everyone the process as far as notifications before we start any work, how things, why this is why these certain items are required to go to Concom, explaining the buffer zones, any types of work, excavation, anything else. So, I think that me included, the whole team have gotten a much better understanding of that. And I think we're going to be back here in a few weeks to discuss a lot of that work and kind of research that we've been doing for the past, I guess, couple months now since that last call, and how we can proceed and hopefully make long-term lasting repairs in the proper way going forward.
Okay, Erica, this entire site is within LSCFS, right?
The majority,
Yeah.
for the most part, yes.
Yeah. So Marshall, I think you understand, you asked what sort of work has to come before us. It's basically everything.
Right,
because
that's what we found. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. The other thing here is you're previewing coming attractions for repairs needing to be done in the future. One thing we do want to make sure is that the work isn't segmented. It would be good to know, what you plan to do. I don't know how far ahead you look over the next year, as opposed to coming and asking for administrative approval for, a few hundred square feet of paving here, the next month, and then coming back 2 months later for, a couple hundred more square feet. And then at the end of the year, all these smaller projects that don't really seem to be a big deal add up to, a critical mass.
Yep, Chair Parker,
so-
we're actually preparing a notice of intent for to try and cover all of the work that we see within the next 3 years.
Great.
We're working with Elena to help guide us through that and using some examples. So it would be a general repair and maintenance order of conditions that will try and evaluate all of the impacts that they could potentially have. So we're in the middle of preparing that to allow us to work through these repair and maintenance with you.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I appreciate the thought you're putting into it. I just want to mention that we don't have a general permit process. So for whatever work that you anticipate doing, we're going to need a level of detail as you would for an NOI. So in other words, it's not like we're issuing a NIPD's general permit. It's going to have to be, we're going to have to know the work, the means, the methods. And then if you deviate from them, you can come in and get an amendment to the order conditions, but just want to warn you on that. Final point before I let this go, and this is for Chris. One thing I would mention about our little jurisdictional spat here is that there is a process where projects like this that we're having a disagreement about could file under the ordinance, and if you disagree or there's an agreement with our decision, you certainly can raise the jurisdictional arguments after. So I don't think by filing under the ordinance that it's a ipso facto, sorry to use that term, it's an acknowledgement that you have conceded jurisdictional issues. Elena, what do you have on this?
Yeah, a lot of what I just wanted to know has been covered, and my question was mostly about the paving. So I know that we're going to work to get the conditions finalized and then sort of proceed as usual, even though this is an after the fact NOI with I think the prior to construction items, things like that, just so that it moves through the way we would with any other permit. But that was, the paving was my main question.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Long?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Parker. So not knowing a ton of the background or, you know, the legality of everything, I do think it's important that the commission is able to, you know, assert its jurisdiction to the extent it deems is you know, appropriate. So I'm not sure what the option is with the NOI here before us tonight, whether we would continue and just ask for a Boston NOI form for the next hearing, or rather than closing the hearing tonight, or if we would close tonight and ask, maybe it wouldn't make sense to ask for a Boston NOI form after closing. So I'm not sure what the options are before us exactly.
Yeah, I think that's right. I don't think until we get the jurisdictional issue, ironed out, we haven't got the proper filing or the proper posting notice at this point.
Right. Yeah. So I think yeah, given what you've said in the background you've provided, you know, I think it's important that we get a Boston NOI form for this before closing. But that's all I have to say.
Okay, Commissioner Richmond.
Yeah, I have a question, and I don't know if it goes to the project manager or to the engineer, but would there have been different alternatives to the repair that has already been done? In other words, it's been completed except for the paving, and I just since I just don't know, would there have been, if it hadn't already been completed, would there have been different ways to make the repair?
You know, it's with this with the infrastructure here that we're dealing with, I think you know, there's two paths that we try and take, and I think if anyone's familiar with the project, and some of our long-term goals here is to really improve, replace, repair a lot of this you know, 100-plus-year-old Navy infrastructure. So, but in the meantime, it's, you know, we're what we try and do with somewhat regular issues and failures is replace it in kind repair it in kind as we're moving forward on our larger scale permitting and investments and replacements. So I don't know how well that answers it, other than to say that on a long-term scale, full replacements of this infrastructure will be the better long-term solution. Near term, it's trying to keep this all operating with the designs that we have.
Oh, okay, well, I'm not sure that did answer the question. Because here's the question. I'll try to ask it differently, and maybe the answer is the same, which is, you know, if we had the hole in the ground, the sinkhole that you had, and it hadn't been repaired, and there was an NOI on the right form and everything before the commission, you know, would there have been different ways to repair that, which might have been better practices, or you know, different, I mean, in other words, it's a done deal now. And so whether or not the Conservation Commission could have considered a better way to make that repair is sort of moot, other than to tell you to undo it. So that's why I'm asking the question, does it make any difference that, you know, if you hadn't already done it, was there a way to do it better?
So I think I can help answer that as well. So we did actually submit some of the old engineered plans from the way the relieving platform was built. So the repairs were done in a way that would restore it to those original plans. And I think for a near-term solution would be to repair it in a way that we know has been existing. And we know we were able to locate the failure and repair it and bring it back to what is existing condition. And right now we are working with the shipyard and engineers to find longer term solutions that will not result in, hopefully, get rid of the potential for sinkholes to open at the shipyard. So these longer term solutions, but I think for timing purposes, having an open sinkhole is obviously dangerous, and I think the immediate repairs were necessary.
Okay, well, I appreciate that answer. I'm not sure that one answer my question either, but I think probably I have just one more, which is you say that you figured out where the problem was, and have you also determined that it is unlikely to happen again? That whatever caused the sinkhole this time is not going to cause another one 5 feet away or 8 feet away or somewhere away?
I can't necessarily say that with confidence. I mean, we are dealing with a shipyard that has been operating, and the infrastructure there is very old. So our long-term solutions would be to fix these repairs and to make sure that they don't occur in the future. But I can't say with confidence that, you know, our repairs would stop a sinkhole in another location.
Okay, thank you very much.
Excuse me, thank you. Commissioner Herbst?
I don't have anything further to add. I share Commissioner Long's comments about having a proper filing. And I am glad to hear that we can expect proper NOIs in the future. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, Elena, anybody from the public raise their hand?
I'm not seeing any raised hands, and we also did not receive any emails.
Okay, thank you. So with that, Commissioner Long, I think this is your motion.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to continue this hearing.
We have a second.
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner Long,
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond,
Aye.
Commissioner Herbst.
Aye.
And I vote aye. That carries 4-0. One thing, Erica, parting shot here is I can't guarantee how Commissioner Sullivan is going to react to the plans that were presented tonight. So you should be in touch with Elena about that. He is said on many occasions in the past, stamp plans and only stamp plans. So that might be an issue here that's going to recur. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is a request for an amendment to the original order of conditions for DEP file number 0061897 and Boston file number 2022-050 from Beta Group Inc. on behalf of the Massachusetts Department of Conservation and Recreation for proposed improvements to the existing Marine Park Playground located at 1889 William J. Boulevard in South Boston. Resource areas land subject to coastal storm flowage. Who's here on behalf of the applicant?
Hi, everybody. Laura Kraus from Beta Group. Also with me today, Sandy Libby from the Department of Conservation and Recreation.
Fantastic. We have something fun to talk about here, it looks like.
It is pretty fun. So apologies for the typo on the first sheet here. But yeah, this is just a picture of the turtle that we are hoping to place at the Marine Park. So if you could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So this image here depicts the location of the project kind of at the red dot in the center there. This is in the South Boston neighborhood along the waterfront, and the project is within land subject to coastal storm flowage, but its distance from the coastal beach is about 200 feet. So we're pretty far inland from the adjacent resource area. So just land subject to coastal storm flowage here. The amendments that we're proposing to the existing project are all outside of the velocity zone, but they are within the AE zone. Next slide. So 2 amendments here, and it looks like they got a little distorted on the slide, so I apologize for that. But the first amendment is in the upper right-hand corner. There's an area that was proposed to be lawn, and we're carving out a small space of the stabilized aggregate material that that DCR uses. It's a pervious surface that has a gravel course underneath it that allows for water to filter through, with a boulder to be placed with a plaque, a dedication plaque. And then over on the left corner, another area that was proposed to be lawn. Similarly, that area will be treated with the stabilized aggregate over gravel. There will be that lovely picture of the turtle that will be placed within this area on the stabilized aggregate. That turtle is currently painted. Prior to it being brought to the site, the plan is to sandblast it, remove the paint, and it will remain unpainted on the site. Also in the location, there'll be two concrete pads that will serve as the home for 2 of the benches on the site. That totals about 24 square feet of impervious surface that was not previously approved as part of the project. So we're here today to present this. The project is under construction now, and Sandy can probably provide some more details on that if you have questions. But as the project is nearing completion, DCR had wanted to add these 2 elements to the project, and we didn't want to come in front of you at the end of the project with a project that didn't fully comply with the plans. So that's why we're here before you tonight. So next slide, and this shows the boulder, a view of the boulder again, showing the poured in place material, and a snapshot of what the plaque is for, as well as another look at the turtle. Thank you.
That's it?
That's it. Any questions?
Okay.
Pretty simple.
I'm not sure I have any, though I like the turtle. Elena, do you have anything on this?
Nothing on this. Also a fan of the turtle.
Okay. Commissioner Long, do you like the turtle?
As long as it's native, yes. That's it for me.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Richmond?
I just have one question, and that is, why did you decide that you didn't want grass?
Because we want to make the area accessible. So that's why. Also, it makes it a lot easier to maintain around the turtle and around the area.
Okay, so, but as I understood it, there were 2 places where you were substituting essentially gravel. It looks like, is that what it is?
Yes, it's the interlock and the compacted aggregate stone dust.
And so there are 2 places, and one of them obviously, as you explained, under the turtle. What was the reason for replacing the grass in the other one?
So the people could walk around the boulder and get up to the plaque and read the plaque.
And grass would get ruined if they did that? I mean,
It will, and it's also not ADA compliant.
Okay, so this
accessibility.
So this is to ensure ADA compliance, and that's the reason for doing this?
That's the reason for doing the compacted aggregate around the features, yes. So that
Okay.
everybody can have access to the benches and the turtle and the plaque.
Okay, and is there any difference in what happens if children fall off the turtle, since they're obviously going to climb on the turtle? Is there any difference as to, I mean, what that is? That a substance that is used in places where kids are going to be falling off of structures?
Well, this turtle is extremely low to the ground, as you can see. And yes, while people will touch it and maybe lay on it, you're basically kind of laying on the ground. It is not high off the ground. It's not inside the playground area, so it doesn't have the poured in place rubber surfacing that we do underneath playground equipment.
Okay, all right, I understand everything you've said, but if you've ever been in the Boston Public Garden and watched the kids climb on the ducklings, you would understand that doesn't matter how close it is to the ground, the kids are gonna climb on it anyway. So that's the reason for my question, and I understand, if I understand what you've said, the reason to change grass to gravel is ADA compliance.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Yep,
Okay.
and probably on the boulder too, where the plaque is, they'll probably climb on that and everything. And but we have a great, I hope you guys have seen that great playground that we have inside. The kids have been really enjoying it and all the different features in there.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Herbst?
No questions. Thanks.
Okay, Elena, anybody from the public?
I see no hands and nothing in the inbox either.
Thank you. So with that, I would entertain a motion to amend the order of conditions for, flip the page too quickly. DP file number 006-1897 and Boston file number 2022-050.
So moved.
Thank you. Do we have a second? This motion has to carry. Commissioner Herbst?
Sorry, I was muted. I've been motioning and seconding furiously for the turtle, but
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Long?
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond?
Aye.
Commissioner Herbst?
aye.
And I vote aye. That carries 4-0. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Okay. There have been a number of continuances continued, have been notice of intent for DP file number 0061704 and Boston file number 2020-007, DEP file number 0061772 and Boston file number 2021-010, DEP file number 0061961 and Boston file number 2023-051, and DEP file number 0061987 and Boston file number 2024-012. Next item on the agenda is, we will now begin our regular meeting, and the first item on the agenda for our regular meeting is a request for a certificate of compliance for DEP file number 0061774 for the demolition of a residential building and construction of a new multifamily residential building located at 839 Saratoga Street in East Boston. Resource areas land subject to coastal storm flowage. Elena?
We have not received an update on this. If the commission will recall, this has been on the agenda for a few hearings now, and we are still waiting for the updated materials. So we would recommend continuing the vote for now.
Okay, so no action on this. Next item on the agenda, request for a certificate of compliance for DEP file number 0060955 for the construction of buildings 5 and 6, landscaping and utilities associated with buildings 5 and 6, and open space work located at 40 East Pier Drive in East Boston. What do you have on this?
Since the last hearing, we were able to re-review some of the materials and clarify a few of the questions that we had, namely about the fish plate locations. Upon reviewing the further materials, we've determined that the project seems to have been done in compliance with the order of conditions, which was issued. We also have noted for the property management team on site that they should be in touch with commission staff if there's work that's happening on the exterior of the building, landscaping, things like that. So we think that will lead to more conversations and just to make sure that everybody's on the same page about what needs to be a filing and what needs to be a notification to us, things like that. So based on that, we would recommend issuing a certificate of compliance.
Okay, great. I don't have any questions. Any commissioners have any questions for Eleanor? Hearing none, would entertain a motion to issue a certificate of compliance for DEP file number 0060955.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner Long?
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond?
Aye.
Commissioner Herbst?
Aye.
And I vote aye. That carries 4-0. Thank you. Okay, administrative updates.
Yes, so we had a few updates. We wanted to flag that there is an administrative approval which we had processed for 170 square feet of concrete repair at 256 Marginal Street in East Boston, Boston Harbor Shipyard and Marina. Both the request and the processed approval are in the drive folder for your review. Happy to answer any questions on that as well. I also uploaded the city's comments on the city's comments on DEP's proposed revisions to the wetlands regs and chapter 91 regs, as well as the stormwater handbook for your review. We appreciate everybody who, reached out to us with comments and kept us in the loop on the way that they're participating in this as well. And we're really, just very thankful for the climate policy team at the city and the department because they were working really hard on this, and it was really exciting to see everything come together. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
And then lastly, just an update on an enforcement order, which the commission ratified last month. It's the enforcement order which we issued to Chestnut Hill Realty. They were meant to reach out to us, and actually also submit plans to us by April 29th, and they have not done so. So we'll be likely checking in with DEP and getting some guidance on what appropriate next steps would be on that. And that was the project where there was seemed to be a lot of vegetation, which was removed. So we will be following up on that. We'll keep you in the loop.
That's frustrating because as I went through the reviewing the minutes from that meeting, we made it very clear to them that we needed something by April 29th. I guess it was the property owners. The owner's rep was trying to get us something in late spring. So I thought the message got across, but apparently it didn't. So please proceed with any sort of escalation that DEP recommends.
Thank you. We will. And actually, just for clarity's sake, believe we missed a call from him and then reached back out and then just heard nothing. So
Okay.
That's where that stands.
Yep. Okay. But the onus is on him. So, okay. Is that it?
That's everything.
Okay. No conditions to issue because we're still working through with DCR. And so that leads us to the last item on the agenda, which is acceptance of meeting minutes from April 3rd, 2023. No, 2024. And April 17th, 2024. I reviewed them, made some very minor edits. They were very well done. Would someone like to make a motion to accept them?
So moved.
Give a second.
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner Long,
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond,
Aye.
Commissioner Herbst,
Aye.
and I vote aye. That carries 4-0. Okay, motion to adjourn by acclamation. Let's all go watch the Celtics if you're a Celtics fan. Good night.
Thanks all.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.